It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hi, guys, and welcome to Pod from the Crypt, Episode 9. I'm your host, Robert Pasercha, and I'm here with co-host Anthony Balzano and special guest Erika Rogers. Today, I'm very happy to announce a special episode where we'll discuss Halloween 2018 and how it will lead to a sequel, Halloween Kills. How you guys doing tonight?
Fantastic.
Great, thank you.
How are you?
Oh,
Nice.
We're going to talk about this guy right here.
That's a nice one. He looks like he almost has like a fat cheek. Is that after he got hit by a car?
Does he have a fat cheek? I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's the way it's like raccoon-eyed. It almost looks like his nose is broken and he's been in a boxing fight. I don't know. Makes sense. He gets pretty jacked up in this movie. Okay, well, you know what? I think we should just kick it off right off the bat. Like, most of our viewers have already seen this film, and at the end it has this pretty, spoiler alert, crazy ending in which Jamie Lee Curtis locks Michael Myers into her own basement on purpose and lights the whole house on fire, while her and her daughter, Karen, run out the back, and Michael Myers presumably burns to death, which 13 movies in, we have a pretty good idea he didn't burn to death. Well, how do you guys think Michael Myers escaped from the basement?
The only thing that I'd like to say is if you look at the coveralls that James Jude Courtney is wearing, those coveralls are actually flame retardant. Don't know if that means anything to you, but I will say that those are actually flame retardant coveralls. So I think that in a way that provides some protection along with this mask. And he's a very resilient guy, you know, he's unstoppable force. He's a force of evil. So that's really the only way that I can think that he'd get out is some kind of interesting maneuverability that he has, you know, this kind of magic that he has to escape dire situations like that, and his flame retardant coveralls.
Yeah, that kind of speaks to the nature of this franchise as a whole. Michael Myers always walks the tightrope between supernatural and just crazy serial killer grounded in reality. We're never quite are led to believe that he is supernatural in most of the sequels, although a lot of them do fall into the supernatural category, specifically like Resurrection, and maybe it's like 4, 5, and 6, something like that. But when you get into H2O and the original, he's just pure evil. He's a real guy, and that differentiates him from Jason Voorhees in that way. Well, how do you think? Huh?
He has died more than a cat, so I think maybe he is supernatural.
Yeah, true. But it's worth noting this sequel is a retcon of all the other sequels. This movie takes place not directly, but what is it, like 20 or 30 years after the original? 40 or 50 years, right? It's like 40 years later.
40. Yeah.
40 years later. Yes, I know. Jamie Lee Curtis is hitting him with the walker. She's on a cane at one point. She's in a remote-controlled wheelchair. It's like this old lady just destroying Michael Myers. They're going back and forth. And you know what? She's like, at one point, she's fighting with her daughter over whether or not she's going to go into a home or not. And in the next scene, she's fighting Michael Myers tooth and nail like a commando.
I want to elaborate off what Erika was saying with the flame retardant suit. I think he probably just got out, like, if you had to really think of a way, because the house is burning, so maybe like a whole passageway happened and he just crawled out. I mean, that's the only thing I could really think of how he got out.
Mm-hmm.
I think he hides in the gun case. You know, she had all those like gun cases. I think he doesn't have to breathe oxygen, and he hid in the gun case, and the glass protected him.
Yeah, now you're getting crazy.
I don't know. Talk about a dumb plan. Like, the lever to the... You guys probably like the plan. I'm sorry. But the lever to, like, make the bars come out that block you into the basement is pretty visible the whole time they're down there. So, like, Michael Myers could have, like, just looked down and seen that, pulled it, and then they would have been stuck in the basement.
I don't think he's smarter than Jamie Lee Curtis in the movie.
I mean, she'd been planning that for 40 years. I think that she knows her
Right.
own house well enough to be like, I'm trapping this motherfucker. Not for nothing, but I can't even imagine how he did all the stuff that he did looking out of that mask. But the fact that he survives it is it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it really kind of is, which, it seems like it does jump to an avenue a little further than him just getting shot 6 times, right?
Yes.
Yeah, which is kind of cool. I did also like in this film, Jamie Lee Curtis's character, Laurie Strode, is not Michael Myers' sister. They state specifically that is just a rumor.
I like that. Some people like that they are related. It kind of creates a connection between the two. I'm kind of on the fence about it. I think he just focuses in on her because she's kind of the one that got away, right? Everybody else kind of succumbs to him, die by him, but she's sort of the one that puts up a real fight and manages to get away. So I don't think that they're related, but there's no, that completely got retconned in this remake.
So I have another question for you. Do you think this movie would be part of what I call Home Alone horror movies, in which a protagonist booby traps their home and waits for the villainous power to enter? Now, it's kind of funny because it's not fair. A bunch of Home Alone horror movies came out way before Home Alone. We have Night of the Living Dead, in which there's like 20, 30 minutes of the movie where he's specifically just boarding up the house and getting it ready for the zombies to come in. We have this Halloween movie. We have some of the, not Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th movies where they get ready for Jason to come into the house. Do you think there's a subgenre that we could coin Home Alone horror film?
There's definitely a home invasion aspect of that, which is a very real and scary thing to a lot of people. I like that term, Home Alone. It's really fun, and especially with all the booby traps that she has set up, I can definitely see the correlation between those two. But yeah, absolutely.
So do you think they should call Macaulay Culkin to be in the sequel?
Dude, exactly. That's what I was thinking. Macaulay Culkin and what's his name? Frodo. Frodo should be in it too. What's his name?
But Elijah Wood.
Yeah. Just throw Elijah Wood in there too. And Jamie Lee Curtis is babysitting the two of them, and she's their grandma, and they have to beat Michael Myers.
They went in such a wild direction with Laurie Strode's character in the sequel. They made her a complete paranoid but also hard-ass woman who her life is kind of completely dissolved because of the trauma that she experienced as a young teenager. She's a very much older woman at this point, and it's still affecting her familial relationships. You have this very fear-based lifestyle, very defensive lifestyle, and I think she's just been preparing for this moment. And for me personally, there's a lot of amazing moments in this movie, but one of my favorite scenes in this entire film is the showdown between Laurie and Michael in the house, because of the choreography is excellent, and it also feels more reality based. There's no fancy moves involved. It's very brutal. There's a lot of tension and dread. And I think the fight between the two has been this culmination of Laurie's entire life of preparing for this, and for me, I think that's one of the greatest moments in the movie because it's, the stakes are very high at that point and you don't know what's going to happen.
You see,
Right.
I kind of disagree a little bit there. I think she wasn't tactical enough in her approach to dealing with Michael Myers. For instance, her initial move of let me put my back to the door and look over my shoulder so he can burst through the window and grab me wasn't a very smart move.
Yeah.
Like our good friend Chris, he would say plot convenience.
Yes. There was quite a bit of plot convenience in this film.
I mean,
Also,
it's a horror movie. Of course there's going to be plot convenience.
well, my coworker was saying today, if they call the cops before they go into the basement, there would be no horror movie. But in this case of the movie, there would be a horror movie because these cops are the most bumbling of cops in films. Michael Myers walks extremely stiff-legged and slow sticking out like a sore thumb even on Halloween, and they somehow managed to like let him walk over to them and murder them at close range while they have guns.
Oops.
Do you think maybe he like burrowed out of the basement?
Like a mole rat? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Why not? You know? I mean, he's done it before, I guess. I mean, he's escaped kind of like off screen a lot of times. I'm very curious to see how he escapes this time. I think that there's no way of saying until we actually see it, you know. But if I could theorize, I'd say that his costume that he dons to give him that sense of power protects him long enough for him to make that escape.
My father said something because he knows how much I love this franchise. I remember when H2O came out. He actually sat down, he watched it with me, and he fucking hates these movies. And Jamie Lee Curtis chops his head off, and he's like, that's got to be it for this fucking guy. And then they came out with Resurrection. He's like, you know what? He's like, the fucking movie business sucks. He's like, this is bullshit. I was like, just leave it alone. Just leave it as is. I was like, it's entertainment.
Yeah, I really like H2O. The end when she chops his head off is awesome.
Yeah, H2O was one of the better films.
Yeah, I think H2O was better than this movie. It was also like I like Jamie Lee Curtis a lot. I think she's a very good actress, and I enjoy most of the movies she's in. Like, shout out to True Lies with Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's one of my favorite like comedy action films. But there is something about Michael Myers being this dominant force that like eats cops for breakfast and kills teens, and he can get hit by a car and he's fine, and then somehow her struggling with him at close range gives him trouble, which I just don't buy because, you know, she's an older woman in her like 60s. At that point, I really don't buy any person giving him a hard time unless there's two of them or they have a weapon or something. But her just kind of struggling with them and it making any difference to him at all, I just don't buy.
Yeah, there's a lot of, cognitive dissonance with that because if you think about the fact that Michael has been sedentary in a hospital for years and is a 60-year-old man at this point, the fact that he's able to endure and persevere through things that he's done, you know, is kind of far-fetched. But I can't really see any kind of 60-year-old man doing that. He's got that old man strength.
There should have been like an 80s training montage. Like, you ever see Hard to Kill with Steven Seagal, where he's in a coma for 7 years and he can barely walk, or like Kill Bill, where she has to spend like 13 hours getting her toe to move.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There should be like an 80s training montage of Michael retraining his atrophied muscles.
But you see, it just goes to show you that he's obviously not human. If
That's
he's
true.
able to be this strong like all this time.
So if Michael Myers is Hellspawn, it would make sense that fire cannot kill him. So to me, that's my... If you really got to get my answer with it, it's because Michael Myers was spit forth from hell, and you cannot kill what comes from hell with fire.
Okay, if that's your theory.
That's my theory. Just fire does not fuck him up, and he's just going to walk out with like a charred ass mask in Halloween Kills, which, by the way, was written or co-written by Danny McBride, the guy from Eastbound and Down, and one of my favorite comedies, Hot Rod. Along with Tropic Thunder and a bunch of other very funny movies. And I think he's in that sequel to that garbage prequel, Prometheus, which the name of it, I don't even remember anymore. Danny McBride helped pen this movie.
I think he did a great job.
There's a lot of comedy injected into this one.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people enjoyed the little boy Julian scene. The Julian is the little boy who was being babysat, right? And I think that scene stuck out to a lot of people.
Yeah.
It was definitely modern humor. It was kind of like not quite the same humor that was back in the 70s. It was very much like, 2018, like modern time humor.
Yeah, definitely.
It really was. And that kid was really fun and endearing. It was a little tonally distracting, I would think. Given
I want to ask you guys something. This was like a big buzz talk. Right after the movie was out, everybody was seeing it. A lot of people were thinking Allison is probably going to be like the killer in the next movie.
Who the hell is saying that?
You didn't hear that from anybody?
No.
Yeah, people were saying that because, like, you know how like they're in the truck driving away and she's sitting in the back with the knife in her hands, and like people were trying to like think of like from like Halloween 5 with the little girl.
Oh, that's such a Daniel Harris route to go.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't agree with like people were saying. I'm like that would be stupid. I was like, it's not gonna go steering away from Michael Myers in the next film. That makes no sense.
Some reason wanted to kill people to try and get closer to Michael Myers, who apparently had this weird love affair infatuation with or something. You know what? I actually like that part. I think a lot of people didn't like the scene where his psychiatrist bugs out and murders the cop. But it was like, it's that kind of movie. Okay. I feel like that just fits in with it. You know? Oh, creepy doctor is a creep. Like, big surprise, you know? I expected that. For him not to be creepy almost makes less sense.
I mean, the most thing I hated about that scene was that it wasn't Donald Pleasance. It was really shitty that Donald Pleasance is no longer around.
What if it was Malcolm McDowell? Would you have felt the same way?
What, the zombie movies? Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't like the route that they took with Malcolm McDowell as the Loomis replacement in his portrayal of Loomis, because they made him seem, especially in the sequel, they made him seem like really pompous and kind of weird. But I think that that Dr. Sartain, he's kind of become so invested in Michael Myers' case. He's a little bit loopy. He's become so obsessed with this case, and he just wants to derive something out of it and just release him into the wild like a wild animal from the zoo. It's literally that. It's literally releasing a tiger from its cage and seeing what happens. It's not really realistic, but in the medical field, you never know what to expect. He's just kind of, he's obviously not fit for that job, and he just wants to see what happens and gain something from this experience, I guess. I don't really know.
Yeah, there's definitely a plethora of historical cases in which doctors did some pretty insane things. Given, have you ever seen The Nick? That is not historically accurate per se, but a lot of things in that show are based on historical activities. There's one thing towards the end of, I think, season 2 where a doctor is trying to do a surgical procedure on his own intestines, and he's using a mirror to do it. And
that actually happened, yeah.
Yeah, and I think in the actual case, the doctor made the mistake of nicking himself and died, because that's a really bad idea to operate on your own intestines backwards. You have to do it in the mirror backwards. That's crazy.
I think it's a great horror concept, is because it's happened in real life, and it's happened time and time again, is all these wayward people who end up in the medical industry have their own strange experiments going on. And that's what happened with Dr. Sartain, is his weird experiment was, resulted in people dying.
Yes, that's definitely true. Okay, so I want to talk about the elephant in the room for me. Okay. What is this movie's problem with podcasters? They hate podcasters in this movie. They murder the podcasters. I was like, those guys were cool. I mean, they're really not. The guy's a total dick. Like, he shows up and he starts waving Michael Myers' mask around. Like, this guy's a jerk off. He's probably one step up from Wally's character in Tusk. Justin Long's character in Tusk. Oh. The Nazi Party podcaster, insult comic. Yeah, this couple is like one scene up from them. Which one of the funniest scenes in the movie to me was when they go to the graveyard, and the old lady, the groundskeeper, is like, "Yes, this is the grave of the people who died," and then they immediately, without a second beat, start going into the details of how they were murdered right in front of her. That part was very funny to me, and it was totally tonally in sync, and I was like, that's where the comedy hit the sweet spot for me for this film.
I hated that scene with him waving the mask. I was just like, this is so stupid, this scene. Like, I was hoping that Michael was going to kill him right there, like in the yard.
I got to agree with you. I really did think Michael was going to kill him there.
I think that was probably my least favorite part of the movie.
I like that scene idea. I just didn't like the way they implemented it.
It wasn't executed.
No, a lot of this film I feel like was like, it just missed the mark in the execution, because I actually like the storyline. It's similar to H2O in a way that it's so many years later. Laurie's messed up from this, and Mike Myers comes back to get her, but she's ready for him this time. Like that is there. But there's a lot of dialogue choices, particularly in the first half of the film, that just don't make sense to me. They're like too on the nose. The most grievous offense, other than that first scene to me, is when the granddaughter, Allison, is like, "Grandma, just let it go," and like walks away. And that's the whole scene. That's all that happens. They're just standing outside this baseball field or track field or something. And Allison goes, "Let it go, Grandma," and just walks away. And you're like, yeah, come on, guys. Like embellish me a little bit. Give me a little filler dialogue to get the mood. Make it a little realistic. Like, to me, no one talks like that.
I think that Karen and Allison are a little bit at odds because I feel like Allison is more willing to accommodate her grandma and try and bring her back into normalcy because she cares about her. And Karen, who is, Laurie's daughter, has been putting up with this her entire life, and she's, ground her into the ground. She's sick of it. And I think that Allison is trying to bring her grandma back into the family and say, look, everything's going to be okay. You don't have to worry about this anymore. And I just want everything to be how I want it to be. Laurie kind of reminds me of my mom in that she's like a slightly paranoid, like, sharpshooter. Like, my mom's a little bit too obsessed with guns.
Oh, okay.
So she reminds me of that in a way, and nothing. And it's kind of at a point where I felt a similar way, where I feel like, what do you have to be so afraid of? Like, what are you preparing for? When really you should be trying to move on with your life, in a certain way. It's kind of that same feeling of being like, why are you living this fear-based lifestyle? I'd like to comfort you in some sort of way and have you back in my life as a normal grandma, or a normal mother, instead of this kind of high-strung paranoid woman that's kind of like affected her in a lot of ways.
That was the strong suit of this film, was the psychological torment bestowed thereafter Michael Myers' influence in her life. And I mean, that's what makes this film stand apart from other ones.
I definitely didn't like that, that like everyone thought she was like so crazy. Like Laurie Strode. Like, I hated that, it's almost like she was alone and like, like everyone was just like, all right, enough already, shut up about it. Like it's over. It's like, no, you have PSD. Like, you're fucked up. Like, this is not going to go away. You went through this serious thing, and like her sister's just like blah about it. Like, who gives a shit?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's another theme that a lot of people really experience in real life, is dealing with someone close to them who has PTSD or another mental disorder. And not only is it exhausting for the party directly affected, but for everyone in the proximity of them. There's a certain point where it's like, I understand that you can blame these problems of yours on your mental disorder, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to put up with it 100% of the time without repercussions. That's a lot to ask of someone.
I think if they were more caring and understanding, like realistically, then it wouldn't be so much tension. But the fact that they're always brushing her off, that just makes it worse.
Well, you got to understand, man, this has been going on for their entire life. So the mother character's in her 30s at this point. So imagine your mom's been talking about this mysterious guy for 30 plus years who's been locked up the whole time in supposedly a maximum security facility, which, interestingly enough, we do know that the doctor's the reason why he escaped. And the doctor's name, Dr. Sartain, definitely is the reason why that prison bus crashed. That was awesome when the kid shoots him by accident, though. That part's great. I think it's cool that Mike Myers just offed kid, but I didn't like the kill. I thought it was a lame kill.
I was so excited that his first kill of the movie was a child. I thought it was like, I know it sounds fucked up, but I mean like I knew once that happens, I'm like, this movie's gonna be amazing with kills if this is where he just started.
Dude, in my version, the prison van hits a school bus, and then Mike Myers gets off and systematically kills all the kids except for one who gets away.
Did you guys think when he was going on that killing spree, just for even a split second, when he passed the baby crib, that he would have killed the baby?
Yeah,
I read a lot of people who, I'm part of like a whole group that discusses this stuff all the time, and a lot of people said, I would have walked out of the theater if he had gone through with that kill. And in a previous iteration, in 2007's Rob Zombie film, he spares another baby. And it's kind of like, well, Michael kills kind of indiscriminately, but there's an incentive for him to kill people that give him more of a challenge and a chase. And I think that's sort of, that fear is what he thrives on. Something as innocent as a baby doesn't really do anything for him. And I think that's why he ignored it, because it doesn't give him any kind of challenge or chase. It's just kind of there, and it doesn't really serve any purpose for him.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because the part everyone loves about the original film is the suspense, this cat and mouse game that Michael Myers plays with Laurie throughout the film. Do you feel like this 2018 version that the whole time was just nodding to the original, nodding to the original, nodding to the original, had enough of that cat and mouse kind of game? Was Mike Myers popping up enough to show you that the main protagonists were his prey and he was the hunter?
I felt like he was out in the open more, like not really giving a fuck.
I agree with you. That's, to me, was Mike Myers walking down the street, sticking out like a sore thumb, and cops being like, where is he? Oh, he's right there. We're going to fuck this up somehow.
Like he was standing on the sidewalk with like 500 kids trick-or-treating.
It's Halloween, right?
No, I know, but I'm saying like in the original, you don't have that.
Yeah.
Well,
but you also don't suspect the guy in the creepy mask, because if it's Halloween, you kind of expect people to be dressed up looking scary. And so I think that's the perfect setting for somebody to go about a total killing spree, is hiding under that guise. And that's the atmosphere,
No, yeah, I definitely thought it was awesome because, like, knowing as, like, the viewer, you're just like, wow, like, look how crazy this scene is. He's just standing with all these children around, and he's about to just go on a murdering spree.
yeah, I think our long-lost host, Chris, was talking about how he wished there were more scenes of Mike Myers blending into the crowd in this movie. And I think that would have made it a better movie if they had that. That does exist in this movie, but it's more implied. There's very little of Mike Myers disappears in a crowd of Halloween masks, which to me is terrifying. Like, that's scary. Like, oh my God, you come home, your babysitter just got ripped to shreds, carved up like a pumpkin. And then the killer is just walking around in broad daylight amongst all the parents with their children trick-or-treating, and no one gives it a second look with her blood still dripping from the murder weapon.
I kind of did want to see just like one kid wearing a Michael Myers mask and he bumps into him and they just have like a moment.
That would have been cool. What about a Jason Voorhees hockey mask? And then Mike Myers is like pissed off.
Yeah, I feel like they could have ruined something like that like into the movie. That would have been funny.
They should have done it.
I think horror fans would have flipped their shit if they saw that.
Yeah. Maybe. We're a touchy sort, certain things rub us the wrong way.
I think they had a lot to live up to. I think there's so many sequels and also the remakes that happened in the mid 2000s that they had a lot to live up to, and they really didn't want to disappoint the fans. And touching back on what you were saying, Rob, earlier, is that just kind of there's a big homage to the original 78 version in that they kind of recreate these scenes that existed in the previous film, the original film, whether it's with Laurie standing outside of the classroom with Allison, and certain aspects like that. I think they were trying to keep it fresh and new and modern with a certain kind of, respect for John Carpenter's version.
Yeah, you can see that in this film for sure. I agree with you pretty much 100% in that regard. So a friend of mine was talking about how he thinks that Halloween 2 doesn't get enough love because if you watch it back to back with the original movie, it is just a continuation of momentum. Whereas the first one is a lot more suspenseful. The second one is like more balls to the wall, slasher, gore and stuff, right? But if you were to watch the films one after the other, they just flow very naturally, which I'm inclined to agree. So my hope is that Halloween Kills does that. I want to see a little bit more creativity in the kills. I want to see a little bit more gore. And honestly, it would be, to me, this would be a silly nod, but I would like to see Michael Myers kill someone with a machete and kill someone with a chainsaw.
Well, Rob, I have great news for you.
What's that?
So I read an article from John Carpenter a couple of months ago, and he said Halloween fans, you better be prepared, he said, because he said Halloween Kills is one of the most brutal slashers he's ever seen.
Oh, dude, that's music to my ears. I got a little bit of a chub
Yeah,
right
I
now.
was very excited when he said that. He was like, it's crazy.
Yeah, I can't stand
It's
up
going
in
to
front
be
of the
good.
monitor right now. Just saying.
One of my very good friends who I've worked on films with for over 10 years worked on the stunt crew, doing coordination on the stunt crew. And all I'm going to say is this is going to be extremely violent and brutal. So if you're into that, get ready. It's going to be very fun.
Oh, yeah,
I'm very
we're going to do an immediate post-viewing interview with the three of us after we all go to see the movie together.
Yes.
And that's the thing is that a lot of people are disappointed in that it won't be released this year. But I think in a certain way, this is a kind of unfortunate year for everybody. And if they want to make the most bang for their buck, they're going to have to release it next year because most theaters are shut down. I haven't gone to a regular movie theater since, early 2020. And so the only thing that they're going to make up for with that is that, one, we get to see Halloween Kills in an Omni theater, and two, with some of the best sound design that exists, on this earth. And so I'll just be patient for that because I think it'll be one of the best theater experiences, you could ever have, especially when it comes to horror, which doesn't really get enough, recognition in the industry. So I'm very excited for that.
That's pretty
I
cool.
agree with that.
Yeah. So do you think Halloween Kills is going to retcon 2020 the way that Halloween 2018 retconned the rest of the series?
Sure.
right.
It gives us some hope and something to look forward to. And, I have some very good friends of mine who have kind of petitioned to have it released this year. But if they want to make money off of this film, they're going to have to release it next year. And that's unfortunate because as much as I'd love for it to come out this year and watch it, I'm a massive Halloween fan. I'm obsessed with it. Unfortunately, that's the way it goes just in terms of business wise,
At least we're going to get Terrifier 2 this year.
Is that?
Oh.
I didn't know that was happening. Really?
Yeah. We just spoke to Michael Levy a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
Oh, shout out to upcoming interview podcast coming out. We interview Michael Levy, the director of, God, what was the name of his movie?
Producer.
No, what's the movie he directed, though? Paranormal Attraction.
No,
Right.
Abnormal Attraction.
Abnormal Attraction, right? Shout out to Michael Levy and Abnormal Attraction. And he is the producer as well as the guy who gets decapitated. Oh, well, let's say he loses his head in the first iteration of Terrifier. Yes, and he's also involved in the production and the shooting process of Terrifier 2. So look out for that interview. It is going to be dropping on our YouTube channel and potentially Podbean, Spotify, and all other places podcast for Pod from the Crypt in the next few weeks, later this month.
To both of you guys, whoever wants to go first, did you guys enjoy 1981 Halloween 2 or 2018 better?
Rob, I'll let you go first.
Probably 1981 I like more, but I gotta tell you, it's been a long time since I've seen the film. All the shit I've been talking about this movie 2018, I still like 2018. I think if you're a fan of slasher films or you're a fan of kind of like strong female characters or just want to see a little bit of blood, because this movie isn't very bloody, but it does like tickle that nerve of like suspense, cutting, whatever. I recommend Halloween 2018 to anyone who wants to watch a moderately suspenseful, scary slasher film.
Erika, before you go, I know you love 2018, but I feel like you're still going to say 1981 for some reason.
Well, it is. It's difficult because I love them both in different ways. I mean, you can't really fully compare an 80s film who John Carpenter kind of wrote overnight, which was quite good for, at the time. I think that the sequel is great. I really enjoy it. I think it's one of the best out of the entire series. And a lot of fans agree with me when I say that. But they don't have the production value that 2018 has, of course. So, but whether or not you take that into consideration, I think that I have a very soft, fond spot for, the sequel there in the 80s because of how easily it kind of like delves into the, it smoothly kind of like moves on to that point. And I think Michael Myers does a really great job of remaining hidden. And I like the hospital setting. Like I don't know what it is about a hospital setting. I think that being at the doctor's or at the hospital is kind of fear-inducing for a lot of people in general. And the idea of being pursued while you're already in a very vulnerable state, it feels like Laurie feels like maybe she can relax for a moment. She's got that nurse, this male nurse who's kind of coming on to her in a way. And her night's kind of been completely ruined. Her friends have been murdered. And she has this male nurse who's kind of there, like giving her this comforting, like everything's going to be okay. And then everything falls to shit. And you're like, God damn, can you just catch a break? So I like the action in that movie. I like the suspense and this kind of like dark hospital setting. Like that's very much what I'm into. So I think they're so different that I would not even compare the two, in a certain way.
So you're going with 1981 then?
I don't know. I mean, if I had to, I'll choose 2018 only because John Carpenter and his son Cody worked on the soundtrack, and I love the soundtrack for this one. The soundtrack is phenomenal, and it breathes kind of some life, even though there's some new characters, which takes a little bit of getting used to. For example, the podcasters. But this is kind of, I feel like I wasn't born in the 80s, and as much as I'm a massive vintage slasher fan, I feel like having experienced it in the theater in real time kind of hits a little bit more close to home, right? Because I never got to experience Halloween 2 in the theaters in the 80s, as much as I love it. So it's a toss-up. I can't really choose. I like them both for entirely different reasons.
Okay, that's a good answer. I mean, I do love both films too, but I would have to go with 1981. I just really like what you were saying, like the hospital scene and stuff. Like, I love the feel in the movie, and I feel like Michael Myers is not at his best, but he's at his close best. He's really fucking creepy in that movie. Like, he really is. Like, he just looks scary. Like the way I don't know. I feel like the way he just moves and the way the camera hits him, he just looks really fucking fierce in that film.
I'm surprised they didn't get Nick Castle to come around again, but maybe he was just, moving on to other projects, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it did change the shape of the mask, not having Nick Castle, but it still looked really effective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, all right, we're just about out of time here, guys. Any final thoughts before we say goodnight to our viewers?
All I can really say is that I'm really excited for the bloodbath of Halloween Kills coming next year.
I am so excited for Halloween Kills.
I think that's going to be such a tension release. This year has been a hard year for everybody, and giving something in the future to look forward to just keeps everybody going,
Yeah. So we can all look forward to the massive slaughter of Halloween Kills next year to wash away our woes in a tidal wave of blood. Until next time, this is Rob Pasercha at Pod from the Crypt. And as always, Anthony.
Smell you later.